Good evening and welcome to the July 21st meeting of the Open Space Conservancy Trust Board. I'm Tom Hildebrandt, Chair, and with us this evening we have Sam Carr, Parks Operations Manager, and Elaine Summergren, Deputy Public Works Director. This meeting is held in accordance with Proclamation 20-28.10 of the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order. That means it's provided on Zoom and via telephone if you dial in. The meeting will be recorded and will be available on the city's website by tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. Our first item of, I guess we need to have the roll call first. So would you call the roll, please?
Yeah, and we do not have any public appearances.
All right.
For roll call, Chair Hildebrandt.
Here.
Vice Chair Mercer.
Here.
Secretary Poor.
I'm still here.
Trustee Bender.
Apparently not.
Here.
Trustee Olson.
Here.
Council Liaison Andro. Trustee Ete. Okay.
Thank you. As you mentioned, no public appearances this evening, so we'll move right into our regular business. First item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the April 21st meeting. The meetings have appeared in the packet. Are there any additions or comments edits or comments that the board would like to make at this time? I gather there are none. Therefore, let us move to a vote. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll approve.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes as shown in the packet, raise a hand and say aye.
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 That's unanimous, so the motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the election of officers. So tonight we're going to use a slightly different procedure than we have followed in the past, and that is we will accept nominations. When the nominations are closed, we'll vote on the first candidate and the second in order and so on. The first candidate to garner a majority of the votes will be the winning candidate for that position. So at this point in time, I'd like to open up nominations for chair. I would like to nominate Carolyn Brisseth to take over as chair for the next year of this board.
Do you need a second on that, or are we just...
No second is required. So all of them, it only you nominate someone and they're on the slate in this group. So any further nominations? Okay, then all in favor of having Carolyn take over as chair for the next year, raise a hand and say aye.
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 Okay, very good. At this point, normally the gavel is passed to the newly elected chair. However, I'd like to propose a deviation for the sake of this evening, that I continue as chair through the meeting because of Carolyn's case of laryngitis, and then she will assume normal duties as chair at the conclusion of this meeting. Is there any dissent with that idea? All right, so we'll continue with that as our program for the evening. So very, very well. I'll now open the nominations for the vice chair. Okay, then I would like to nominate Geraldine Poor for vice chair. Any further nominations? Hearing none, I open the vote. All those in favor of Geraldine Poor as vice chair for the next year, raise a hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
It appears unanimous. So we have our vice chair for next year. Thank you. And for secretary, I will open the nominations now. I would like to propose that Hilary Ete take the position of secretary for the next year. That's my nomination. Any further nominations for secretary? Hearing none, we move to a vote. All those in favor of having Hilary serve as our secretary for next year, raise a hand and say aye.
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 That is
Now
also
she's gonna
unanimous.
find out what happens if you don't come.
Yeah. What happens when you don't come?
Yes. Okay, very good. So we have our slate of our executive committee or our chair or whatever, our officers. That's what I mean to say, our officers for next year. So that means we can move on to the third item in our agenda. So this will be information on the status of the transfer of title of Engstrom Open Space to the Open Space Conservancy Trust. And I gather Elaine is going to give us an update there. So thank you, Elaine.
Good evening, trustees. For the record, Elaine Summergren, Deputy Public Works Director. Tonight, I just want to give you a really brief update on the Engstrom title transfer. I believe that it was, I guess it would be former Chair Hildebrandt, Trustee Hildebrandt, who brought this to the attention of staff. I believe it was last year that in looking at the records on the King County Assessor's website found that the title for Engstrom Open Space was still in the city's name. So staff has been doing a fair amount of research on this, looking back through minutes at the resolution that went to City Council in 2010 regarding what is, and I will quote, the governance and management of Engstrom Open Space and transferring that to the Open Space Conservancy Trust Board. Going back through all of those records, we found that the title should have been transferred, but it never was. Staff is very eager to get this reconciled as soon as possible, and we will be bringing a new resolution to council, hopefully in early fall this year. City Council, as you know, is in recess for August, and we are aiming for September, one of the September meetings, but I will certainly send an email to trustees regarding this item if it goes onto the council agenda before the next meeting of the Open Space Conservancy Trust Board. And then I will give an update at the October meeting. If you have any questions, I would be happy to take them.
Okay, I think that's pretty clear. Thank you for that update.
Wonderful, thanks.
Now let's move on to the fourth item on our agenda, the discussion of a permanent restroom facility in Pioneer Park.
All right, I'll be speaking about this and presenting. Sam Hard, Parks Operations Manager. All right, does everybody see the slideshow?
Yep.
Okay, so Pioneer Park permanent restroom feasibility. This is, there has historically been discussion about the potential for a permanent restroom facility at Pioneer Park over the years. So this is just a little bit of background and information on this topic. So a bit of background, portable toilet has been installed in Pioneer since the mid 2000s. I'm not exactly sure the exact year, but it's definitely been that long in the Northwest quadrant. It's used by park visitors. There's not a lot of other parks bathrooms around, so it's definitely gets used a lot. This is a simple, low cost, low maintenance option. It doesn't really require any staff time because it's a rental, and For the most part, there's not really any problems. Occasional vandalism, but hopefully more occasional than often. So permanent restroom considerations. This facility is not included in the Pioneer Park master plan. There is significant cost related to installing a permanent restroom facility, design, permitting, utility connections, maintenance. I did some research on the potential for a composting toilet facility, but this is not permitted under current city code, so that was a dead end. Additionally, it's not identified in any capital improvement planning, and it doesn't have any funding associated with it. This is just a comparison of portable versus permanent restroom maintenance costs. These costs are based on maintenance of a small permanent restroom, such as Dean's Children's Park. There's the single stall restroom there. The portable option has a cost of around $2,000 a year and very little staff time to maintain. It gets serviced by the rental company, and it's kind of out of our hands. We don't have to do much with it. The permanent small park restroom can cost over $4,000 a year in maintenance and cleaning. These type of facilities generally have a higher level of service. They have running water, they have consumables that parks has to replace. They are more prone to people just making messes and using them and things like that. So just ends up costing more. There's plumbing and electrical and lights and things like that. So in addition to the costs for water, sewer, and electricity utility service. Conclusions. So there are many steps associated with pursuing this option. If the board was interested in staff pursuing it further. First, with the amendment of the master plan, we would have to find funding and significant staff time for design, permitting, and project management. Now, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yes, you're on mute, Carolyn.
Right there, there's my mute. Yeah, I just had one question. You know, I'm only, and maybe we've covered this before, Sam, do we have any thought about what the usage is or how many people are using the temporary bathrooms?
It's hard to quantify.
Yeah.
I think I want to say the maintenance schedule for that facility is on a once a week cleaning schedule. Some of our other areas where we've had portable toilets in busier areas of the parks require more frequent cleanings.
Okay.
But it would be tough to determine.
Yeah. Well, then that's a, yeah, thank you. That's a good estimate. I mean, the only thing that I can think about is one of the permanent facilities that's over there at Homestead Field, where it's certainly my impression there's a whole lot of usage. And you know, so as we look at the cost or the return on investment, so to speak, you know, I'm not sure that, you know, we have a compelling issue that would drive you know, a need for a more permanent facility. In my opinion, you know, I don't know if we have other data that would suggest that there's a need.
Craig, you had a question or comment?
Oh, it's along the same lines as Bruce said.
Yes, Marie?
You know, I guess my only comment was, in all the surveys that we've done, I don't recall hearing any outcry for a bathroom at Pioneer Park. And the other thing I would say is, you know, Pioneer Park is different from a playground where people sit around and play with their kids and they're there for an hour, 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a walk-through, run-through sort of environment, which is not really the situation where you think of a need for a bathroom being all that obvious. So, you know, I wouldn't be in favor of moving forward at this time. I do have another question, however, which is, I do occasionally bicycle over to Pioneer Park and would love to have a place to park my bicycle. And which seems to me like a low cost, no maintenance kind of adjustment. And since we already have a big sign and some development in the southeast corner of the northwest quadrant, I would like to at least suggest that we consider putting a bicycle rack there. And I don't consider this to be of any urgency, just something to stick in the back of your mind should we be doing future planning for the park.
Yep, that's a nice suggestion. A bit off the topic of the permanent bathroom facility. So what I'd like to suggest is to give the public time to comment on this. We should put it on an agenda for a future meeting and discuss that as an agenda item for something that we'd like to have installed in the park. So
yeah, and I mean, I totally agree with that. This is just throw it out there and put it in the hopper.
So good. We'll add that to a future agenda and return to the topic of the permanent restroom facility. Generally speaking, well, my comment on that topic is that I think that the feeling of Pioneer Park as being kind of a natural area sets it off as well from the developed parks on the island. So I would not be in favor of adding the permanent restroom facility to it for that reason. Also, it's close enough to the commercial area, GLC and such, that people that have a great need for using the restroom can find a welcoming establishment over there. So what would staff like to hear? Do we need a motion to not do anything, or I would think it's sufficient to not make a motion to move forward with this proposal at this time?
I don't think we need a motion. I think we can leave it at that, just the discussion, and if it comes up later, we can bring it back and address it.
Yeah, we could review the public survey that was tabulated last year, the park survey that was part of the plan development, and see if there was public support for the idea. But at this time, I think we don't desire to move forward with this proposal. So I'll take that as an action item and give a report at the next meeting. Okay, very well. We can move on to our next agenda item, which is a review of our special events policy. So do you have a revised policy to share with us?
Yeah, so if you remember our last conversation regarding the policy, you wanted to see a few changes made and then have that brought back. And so I've made a couple changes, and I can share my screen and show you, and then we can move on from there.
All right.
All right. So it's pretty small, but significant, I think. So the changes requested to vote on were made right here. So the off-trail use of Pioneer Park is prohibited except for approved educational, scientific, or forest health activities. And then I removed the portion down here that had off-trail usage as one of the criteria. And those are the changes I made.
Okay, the fee schedule in the document was created in 2013, I believe. And so I think that should probably be updated to reflect the actual processing costs that would be associated with, or rather the damage deposits should be adjusted for inflation before we consider this revision complete.
Yeah, so I thought about that. There is a note under that table that says these are $2,013 and the fee schedule will be adjusted to keep pace with inflation. I did not do that just because it wasn't mentioned in the last meeting, but I kind of take that to mean that I can probably do the research and make that adjustment accordingly. So I can make those changes and we can talk about it later, or we can potentially approve this with the updated dollars being. I'm not quite sure about the how the hourly rate of the 2013 calculation fits into the table. So I might have to kind of dig around to see how they calculated that. But there are a couple simple updates I can make just relevant to today's wages.
Sam, it looks like there may be 3 places where there are costs associated here that I think we could work with the recreation staff to make sure that if they're processing applications and routing them through other city staff and departments, that's reflecting the actual cost. One of them is in section 4B, where it says Parks and Recreation staff cost $37 an hour with a 3-hour minimum. I would want to make sure that that is still relevant because this was 9 years ago. I think we can talk to them about what all is included in a special events permit and how this number of participants was calculated. And then section 4E, where we talk about the restoration costs, because we have seen increases in restoration costs per square foot. I think that it's worth consulting with Lizzie on how those restoration costs may have increased since then. So I think all 3 of these things we could probably address and just bring back as proposed edits at the next meeting, if that works.
Yes, that would be fine. As far as I'm concerned, I guess I need to take input from the board here. Is that generally acceptable? Yes, Marie, please go ahead.
And the only thing I would say is just, and this is probably obvious, but since I've done this kind of stuff before, it would probably be best if we try to keep it within a $25, round things to the closest $25, not have $104.72.
Totally agree.
That's probably obvious and didn't need to be said, but there you go.
All right, and I don't think there's any great pressure behind approving this update at this time, so letting it go for another meeting is fine. So unless there's dissent or further discussion, then yes, Jerry, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Of course, thank you. My brain is playing with the edit that was made that Sam Harper pointed out to us. Thank you very much. When you said that you deleted the thing about the off-trail use from the event requiring a special event application, to the extent that that was deleted, it seems to me that means that if you're here for an educational, scientific, or forest health activity, you would not need to get a permit. And I wonder if that is the intent. And I wonder if I'm being a little too picky about this.
Well, yeah, pardon me. I did review the video from last time because I wanted to see if the damaged deposits had actually been updated, and we didn't actually discuss that last time. So, but according to discussion that I reviewed, the criterion for having to obtain a permit was that there was going to be significant off-trail use. And the argument against having that as a criterion was that it suggested that off-trail use could be approved. So instead, we moved that item up into the preamble, saying that off-trail use would not ever be approved except for scientific, educational, or whatever the third, let's see.
Forest health, right?
Forest health activities, yes, indeed. But we retained the other triggers for the requirements of obtaining a permit. So that means that you still would require it if any of the 5 remaining items were triggered, like a group of larger than 50 people or time period. And so it is rather restrictive if any of those triggers pertains, then you still are required to obtain a permit.
Okay, and my concern was that a group of foresters coming in on a scientific purpose will be allowed, and we know that they will be allowed, but they wouldn't have to get a permit, technically, the way it's written now, as I read it.
Well,
if we're all okay with that, that's fine. Or I may be reading it incorrectly.
Jerry, maybe your question is, what does approved mean? When it says approved educational, scientific, and approved by whom and how?
Yeah, that's a different way of looking at it, Marie. Yeah, thanks. Do you understand the issue, Sam? We can take it away and think about it.
Yeah, my thought is that those 1 through 5 below would still apply, so they would still need to get a permit and be approved, unless there was someone we hired to do some forestry work or something like that. But yeah, I mean, if there's a better way to word it, then I'm open to suggestions.
I'm happy to drop you an email after the meeting, suggest something.
Great. Yeah, it sounds like we'll have another opportunity to look at this, so we can find the right fit.
I guess the only thing I would say is I think maybe we need to differentiate educational and scientific from forest health. I mean, when we invite people in to do forest restoration, I don't think they have to go through the procedure. I think the staff arranges that and we understand what's going on. Educational and scientific may be a little different category.
And another potential option would be to re-add that condition in there and then have another reminder that off-trail use is limited to the following, so that, because before off-trail use was not,
Right.
there were no conditions associated with it in that bullet. So it could just be reiterated, only permitted for these activities, something like that, but it would still trigger approval, the need for approval.
I think that would work, adding in a sixth section saying off-trail use, parentheses, limited to educational scientific work. So it doesn't hurt to be redundant in that case.
So why don't we go through and make a number of changes, redline the document, and then bring it back again, and then hopefully, if our wordsmithing is not adequate, the trust can also wordsmith additionally.
Yes. That sounds good. Is there general consensus from the board that that's our direction? Do we need a motion to pursue that? Okay, I think staff understands what we want at this point. In revising the table of damage deposits, it would be helpful if you come prepared to explain how the numbers are derived. So I think that takes care of that item. Thank you. Let's proceed. The next item on the agenda is an update on the off-leash usage of the park by dog owners and dogs.
Yeah, Sam Hart, Parks Operations Manager. So I spoke with police and other staff, and there really hasn't been any reported issues or very many notable ones in the last year or so. So it's a pretty quick update on that front.
All right, that's good to hear. And so no letters that you've been collecting from citizens about off-leash dogs and unmanaged excrement and other things that we often hear about?
No, not on Pioneer. A lot of what we get related to dogs is more of damage to sports fields, turf areas on the north side. We are also kind of a cooperation with our natural resources team and our stormwater team. We are doing some dog waste outreach in the field in some park areas, but we haven't really gotten anything specific to Pioneer Park.
I see. Would that just be signage and public education?
Yeah, there's areas, and I don't recall if Pioneer Park has any of the areas, but it's basically going through and putting flags where they see waste, and then having some signage boards kind of explaining what the program is, and surveying and doing counts, and then later going back and doing more counts and seeing what if there were any reductions over time with the educational campaign. So that's kind of just a public outreach thing. It's also part of our stormwater permit to do some of these activities.
I see. Any other questions from the board?
No, I've seen those, and our neighbor Craig and I have discussed those down at Wildwood Park. We've seen them and they look very educational.
All right. let's see if I can bring up this item. So it was mentioned before the meeting began that we should refrain from speaking about any campaign-related topics related to the bond proposal or that will go on the November ballot. And so I'd just like to reiterate that you all should have received an email from B.O. Park, the city lawyer, city attorney, outlining the restrictions on your behavior. And as members of the board, you are considered to be employees of the city. And I would think the most salient restriction is that you cannot use your city email account to do any kind of campaign related activity. And further, whatever position you have with respect to the ballot measure, you stress that it's your personal opinion whether you support or do not support the bond or the levy measure. So I'll leave it at that and encourage you to read the materials that were attached to the email. So that's just an informative item. And now we can move on to other business. Oh, actually, I see quadrant reports here. So at the conclusion of quadrant reports, since we didn't do it at the election of officers, we will revise our quadrant assignments for the coming year. So let's first have our quadrant reports. So who's reporting on the Northwest quadrant? Okay, go ahead, Jerry.
I'm glad to see the trails drying up, a little less muddy, and I did notice that there'd been work done in some of the areas that we talked about before, so greatly appreciate staff effort out there. Nothing new to report.
And
Okay.
I also have the Northwest quadrant, and it's looking very nice. And today I was just popped in for a while, and it was so busy. It was great though. They had maybe the high school jogging team or something went flying through a whole bunch of times, young women and men, and it was really fun to watch. And then this one guy came along and probably had a bike class, and he had maybe 9 little kids on little tiny bikes behind him going through. It was really cool. So it just shows our parks are getting well used and well loved. So very good.
All right. And how about we hear about the Southeast quadrant? Is that you, Marie?
So I have recently been there. Everything looks great. Everything is dry and beautiful. Nothing seems to be dying, which is good. I have noticed, I don't know what other people have, but it seems like maybe this is just a cycle, but there seems to be a lot of decayed trees are suddenly falling apart, which is, you know, just part of what it's supposed to be. But we did notice, and I'm not even remembering which quadrant it's in, but there's one big tree that has roots about 3 feet tall that grow up on the trunk of something else, and the trunk is now gone, and it's this little wonderful magical place little kids would love to be in.
Oh yes, that's in the Northeast quadrant.
Is that in the Northeast? Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And any other reports for the Southeast quadrant? Is that your quadrant, Carolyn?
I would love to just say something really quick about the Southeast quadrant, if you don't mind. This is probably the right place to mention it.
Okay.
I just want to let you all know that the Mercer Island Saddle Club has created a link on their website for Pioneer Park manure sightings primarily in the Southeast quadrant. What it does is it actually links you to a form that you can fill out, very, very easy. And what it does is it just lets them know to go out and find the manure that's been left by an errant horse on the trail It's actually very easy to use in that they have a trail map on there, so you can actually just pinpoint where it is. So just want to alert everyone to that. I think it's a fantastic tool that this makes it a whole lot easier than going and talking to the barn manager. So
Yes,
I just want to thank them for that work, and hopefully the word gets out.
yeah, thank you.
I am happy to report we didn't see any manure piles on our outing, so that's great.
But we have encountered staff and
Yes.
some are folks doing remediation, and that's been really, really nice to see.
I'd like to comment too, the volunteer effort on the ivy removal is quite dramatic in the southeast quadrant. It makes a huge difference on the understory. It looks great.
Yeah. We found city staff working over there, which was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least the summer hires. I'm not sure who they were, but they were city people.
I have a question about,
Yes.
if I may, about Elaine's update. I wonder if the city would be able to publicize that in the Let's Talk or the weekly news or something, just so that people do know about it and have the visibility. I don't know if it's really of citywide interest, but I put that out for consideration.
We will certainly take that into consideration. I'll talk with our communications manager about the possibilities there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any further reports regarding southeast quadrant? All right. My assigned quadrant is northeast. I haven't been in there for about a month, but last time I was out there, it looked very nice. It's clear that the trails are being regularly maintained, and there are a number of dead trees that have fallen over recently, and Andrew and his crew have been doing a good job of making sure that the trails are clear. So that's great. Also, in the northwest quadrant, I noticed that someone had gone out recently and repainted the roots that stick up through the trails to make it easier to notice and steer around those. So that's good. It's clear that the trails maintenance is being kept up very well. Okay, so let's move on to quadrant assignments for the coming year. And would the same assignments be acceptable, or do we wish to change things up a bit? Yes.
Having never been assigned to the southeast quadrant, I wonder if there's someone who has that who would like to trade. Otherwise, I can stick where I am.
Yeah, I'd like to do southeast just because I've never done it.
I think we're saying the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
I'm on the southeast, but I haven't really had much time in the northeast. I've traded for that.
I'd like to be in the northeast as well.
All right, well, we have 2 volunteers for the northeast, and it sounds like we have 2 present for southeast, and I don't mind taking northwest. That's where I spend most of my time anyway. So I'll put Marie and Craig in northeast, Geraldine and Carolyn in the southeast, and then I'll assign Hillary to northwest. All right. That's very good. And now, we have our topic for future discussion will be a bike rack facility in the southeast corner of the northwest quadrant. And are there any other topics that we would like to put on the future agenda at this time? Bearing in mind that you can always send an email to the current chair to have an item placed on the agenda for a future meeting. Not hearing any, that concludes topic number 8. And our next scheduled meeting is the 20th of October. And I look forward to seeing you all there. Is there any closing comments? Okay, then I'd like,
Hey,
okay,
I have one question.
Yep.
For, I guess, Elaine. What's the possibility we're going to have an in-person meeting?
I wish I had a concrete answer for you, but I will say that we are trying to move towards that. So we will certainly, hopefully I can provide, or Sam can provide an update on the status of that at the October meeting. So if you don't hear about it before that, there is an in-person option. I believe the option being pursued right now is at least to do a hybrid.
Yeah.
So allowing for some in-person and those who need to remain remote, remaining remote. But I will certainly provide an update.
okay. Yes, Jerry?
I was going to say thank you for your service as chair, Thomas.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
I've enjoyed
thank
it.
you. Congratulations to the new officers.
Yes. All right, very well. I'd like a motion to adjourn at this time.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
And a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, raise a hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you very much.